Hi, this is Craig Camp. We're here for another edition of Troon Talk. This is one of our Troon Conversation series where we talk with one of our staff members here, digging down deep into what they do. And today we have our Director of Sales, Nate Winters, with us.
Hello, happy to be here.
So Nate, if I remember right, the last thing you did before you came to Troon was jumping out of an airplane.
Yeah.
So how did you end up at Troon?
I landed right here. When I got out of the military, I decided to give a little bit of a change of pace to a career path, and my brother got me a job at a local restaurant, and I just happened to carry resumes in my car. Someone from the vineyard came in, and I was waiting on their table, and they said they were hiring, and I thought, why not give it a shot? So I dropped off a resume, got an interview a couple days later, and I got bit by the wine bug quick. This is the only vineyard I've ever worked at, and I've been here just over 10 years now.
But indeed, you were a paratrooper.
Yeah, I was in the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. We did a lot of things that I can't tell you about. No, not really. Jumped out of some airplanes and learned how to work under stress, manage small teams. Discipline. I could do some good push-ups, and yeah.
So you're unique here at Troon because you've literally worked in every aspect of the company, from the tasting room to the vineyard, the winery, and now sales. So what has that experience been like?
Fortunate and very lucky. I think positioning myself for something like this, I didn't quite know that was coming, but I got here just at the right time as well, of a big transition that we went through as a company. And keep your head down, take initiative, and look for that next thing. I started here in the tasting room, started managing the tasting room briefly before we moved to the cellar. Worked in the cellar with a former winemaker for just over a year. And now I do all the sales, which I think, coming full circle about how to present wine, taste wine, make wine, and steward it, just makes me a better salesperson overall. So I've been doing the sales for about 6 years now, and continue to try to reach new heights with the new wines that we're making from a brand new operation.
So you were actually the first person I met at Troon. You were working in the tasting room then. Obviously, our tasting rooms have gone through a huge transition in that period. Can you just give us some thoughts on that transition?
Yeah, I think even on the eyes, the aesthetically is the first thing that jumps out at you when you come here. From landscaping, from plants, we changed our labels. We have a new staff over the years, but we've also invested into our staff with education. And I think all that delivers a much more refined and personable experience than we used to have back in the day. But we still try to make wine and deliver it to the people, have it on people's tables, and the tasting room is the best place for us to really make connections for that. And we've come a long way, especially the interior, and I'd say more to come too.
Well, what was it like to make that transition from the tasting room to the vineyard and the winery?
I learned a lot in the sense that not everybody wants to hear all your knowledge, but also, you can't just rush through a checklist. I think that was the most interesting part for me, coming from the military, and this kind of like hurry up attitude doesn't always get you to point B in the cellar the right way. You can't cut corners. You have to top every barrel appropriately. So a more slow and methodical, kind of efficient approach I had to learn how to do, from the tasting room of quick results to more of a stewardship into the cellar. And even past that, as far as handling accounts and personal relationships with wine buyers across the country, it's kind of the same thing. It's all about timing and being methodical. And so that was one of the challenges, for sure, of just wanting to hurry up and go do the job. It was more of think about how to do the job the right way.
So in addition to the experiences you've had here, you're also a certified sommelier from the Court of Master Sommeliers. What is that process? How does one become a certified sommelier?
The Court of Master Sommeliers is an organization that within that has 4 different levels of certifications. The intro level is the level 1. You have certified, which is level 2. You have advanced sommelier at level 3, and then of course a master sommelier at the level 4. I've achieved the first 2 levels, and with a big thanks to here at Troon, again, investing in us to try to pursue our own greater knowledge. It was kind of a whirlwind, but I think, everything we've talked about so far has been a prep in the sense of throwing you into the deep end and seeing how well you swim and where you need to improve on. The sommelier exams are very rigorous, and they get not only wider, but with more depth in each certification as you go up. So the intro level was a wonderful 50 question multiple choice test. It was kind of a survey course. When you pass that, and then you can apply to go to the level 2 certification. And in my opinion, that's when things get real. When you have a blind tasting exam, you have to say, the grape, the varietal, the place, the price, the soil type. You have to get as best as you can on 2 whites, 2 reds in 12 minutes. You have to take a written exam, and then you're tested on how you wait a table as well. And I like that aspect of hospitality being lumped in there rather than through the WSET program, the Wine Education Spirit Trust, is more of a practical wine growing, grape growing, wine making approach. So I'm glad that, especially with the background here in the tasting room, to get some more hospitality experience, how to properly serve a bottle, and then educate or entertain the guest that's in front of you.
Do you think that's been a useful experience, that learning the professional hospitality as far as improving our service here in our tasting rooms?
Yeah, yes. And, there's been challenges, especially since COVID, on how we pivot and approach these hospitality kind of endeavors, and how we curate an experience, not only for a guest, but, whether it be a wine club member or someone that's brand new to us being able to offer consistency, how we present not only ourselves, but the products in front of you. And we're here to be a voice for the farm. And I think that is, ultimately what it's made us better at.
So do you think this certification has been an asset to you professionally?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a witty way to answer that, but just yes. I sell wine in about 12 different states, and there's a lot of major cities that we go into and a lot of serious restaurants. And for what it's worth, you get a little bit of street credit when you see certified sommelier, especially when working with other sommeliers. They kind of know where they can have a conversation level with you at. They kind of know where to start. It gives you a little bit of a resume, showing you that you have been proven. But then there's also a lot of things where, it doesn't necessarily, it's not the end all be all for somebody. When you get to talking to them, you can kind of see where they're at without a certification. But for personal benefit, I would say, yeah.
So you've been here during our entire transition to biodynamics. What has the transition to biodynamics meant to you as a person working on a biodynamic farm?
I'm not sure how long this is going to run, but I could go on for a long time. Biodynamics has totally taken a role in my personal life since working here and getting illuminated to the culture and what biodynamics means as a holistic farming approach, and then an extension of that into the way that you live your life. Everybody starts at a different place when it comes to learning about biodynamics, and I would say when we started here, there was some skepticism. Not a lot of people, even that I come across today, can give a full scope understanding from the calendar of biodynamics to the preparation making to just walking out there and having this philosophical approach to farming as well, instead of this means give nutrients to the plant, or this sign means give food to the plant. We're really trying to heal the soil and create a good foundation. And I think the same approach for a human. You can't just band-aid yourself if you're sick. Trying to fix the root cause and then building from there. Biodynamics has offered a real closed loop, holistic approach to not only farming a system of agriculture, but also how to steward your personal body through this life of artificial food coloring and additives. I feel like this is it's spoiled me when I go into a grocery store. I look at labels now, I look at ingredients, and maybe one day we'll get a little closer to all of this being a little bit more approachable to the layman, and whether that be what organics means to people and what biodynamics means and how they differ. It's just nice to see more Demeter biodynamic products in the stores in general.
What changes have you seen in our wines that you could attribute to biodynamics?
This is a question I get a lot, in the sense of people ask me what the difference in the wine is. You know, we talk about how we make the wine very differently from people all the time, but the end result is so subjective. But I think the things that we can measure are just the undeniable things that, you know, good wines transcend a palate, whether you know nothing or you know a lot. You know a good wine when it slaps you in the face with aromatics and it has a lot of life. You don't have to kind of stick your nose in there and search for things. These flavors and aromatics and complexities within the wine tends to find you. I also think, you know, a lot of wines, I've learned that wine is a living beverage with its own, you know, little microbiome in there, and from day to day that wine can change. And when you buy 6 bottles and you open one every month, you really get to see how that wine changed over time. And biodynamic wines, to me, tend to have a little bit more consistency. They offer the same highs, but maybe not as low of lows day to day, being that there's a little bit more healthier microbiome. There's not a ton of sulfur killing everything in there or sterilizing the wine, protecting it. I think that there's a more unadulterated expression of sense of place, if I could say, through biodynamic wines, which, as an overthinker, I love to overthink the wine in my glass, and I think biodynamic wines seem to capture my attention a little bit easier these days.
So you're all over the country talking about biodynamic wines. What is the market for biodynamic wines, and what type of customers are interested in them?
I think more people are being stewarded to the right direction of just integrity-driven products. And I think biodynamic wines fall into that, whether it's in a grocery store that has a really nice health focus of such like the PCC markets in the Pacific Northwest. You have Good Earth and Erewhon on the West Coast, but you know, Mom's markets out there throughout the country. There's a lot of these places that have a focus on just integrity and sustainability. So I feel all those people that shop there have some sort of an open mind to, even if they don't know biodynamics, to try a biodynamic product. There's biodynamic soaps, there's other products than wine. But when we talk wine specifically, I feel that they are doing the best where there's just inquisitive people that are looking for the next thing. And you know, cities seem to bring that just higher density population. So there's more people looking for things like this. But you have the restaurants having a little bit of a movement right now for non-alcoholic beverages. And I think we are the next best step when you want an alcoholic beverage, but to still care about, you know, what you're putting into your body. People that are hand selling, there's a lot of other sommeliers across the country that are also doing, you know, the Lord's work of trying to preach better products. I think that it's not quite as mainstream as we would like it to be yet, but it's working that way, and it has a better understanding of a definition than I would say like regenerative does right now, but both of them kind of feed into each other in a way.
Do you really see that market growing? There's more interest all the time?
I'd say, yeah, there's more interest all the time, especially in the younger demographics of people that are looking for a little bit more, as we keep saying, a health conscious product. Ingredient labeling, lower alcohol, again, speaking to a sense of place, whether you can have a person be there to tell a story in person. If you don't, a bottle of wine really does a good job of that as well. And especially Biodynamics being an international association through Demeter International, I think it's not just unique to where we are in our little echo chamber of the West Coast. It's a common language that when I run into someone from a different country, we already have some common ground on where to start a conversation with, being biodynamics instead of just organic. You know, Canadian definition of organic and the United States definition of organic don't quite match up, but I find that the Demeter regulations are a little bit more cohesive from country to country.
You've been doing this for a few years now. How have you seen the market change from when you first started for biodynamic wines?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to go off of this, but just more knowledge being built. Of course, there's a lot of what I look for comes from, you know, the James Beard Foundation. When I look at restaurants and who's doing the most creative, ingenuitive, pioneering, standout things, you get people like the Michelin Guide and the James Beard nominees that are really highlighting people. And I feel like that's really propelled a lot more sustainability, not just in wine, but in agriculture when it comes to produce and where chefs source their products. A lot of these front of the house people in restaurants are taking the same approach to their wines and their beverages. So I would say there's more people looking for things like this. And we look forward to, I think, the scalability as a whole for biodynamics to become more approachable to, like I said, just a layman person, or if you go to a Waldorf school and you're more inclined to buy a biodynamic wine in general.
So besides being biodynamic, Troon is regenerative organic certified, which we're actually pioneers in. I'm sure in the beginning not too many people had ever heard of that. How do you see regenerative organic fitting into the marketplace now?
It's in this stage where it's a new certification, so there's still a lot to be told to people, but when they hear it, I think viscerally people just relate to it a little bit more. For me, the biggest difference is the measuring of sustainability with the soil health components that the regenerative organic certification offers, that organics and biodynamics don't necessarily audit you every year to make you prove you're regenerating organic matter in the soil or sequestering carbon the right way. So I think those keynotes of regenerative, they hit with people a lot better, especially when they're looking for organic, to know that there's something beyond organic. They seem to want to go there a little bit more. There is still a little bit of misunderstanding. There is some, I hate to say the word, greenwashing going on out there, but regenerative, the ROA, the Regenerative Organic Alliance, has the certification, and they're providing a lot more transparency and clarity to what it actually means to be regenerative and regenerating the soils. And again, I think that just leads to better quality fruit, better quality farm, better quality culture and people, and we can hopefully make a better product to deliver as well.
Do you notice a difference in the marketplace between people knowing about Demeter Biodynamic and knowing about regenerative organic?
Yes, there seems to be more of a broad or less of a Venn diagram in this specific topic. Biodynamics is more popular, and that may come with some connotation that you assign to it, but it is more popular and has a more cohesive understanding in the wine department than regenerative does. But again, it's very early in the regenerative organic certification, for just almost 3 years old now or so. I was just looking, there's just over 400 farms globally that are certified, and that's not at the gold level. So when we talk about regenerative, that's one discussion, but then regenerative bronze or regenerative silver, regenerative gold, all go a little deeper into what that means for each other. And so when we start talking about that, it tends to get a lot of information for someone to comprehend, especially when I'm in the grocery store with their beverage and produce manager, and I only have, say, 40 minutes to talk to you. There's only so much we can cover. Whereas biodynamics is the same thing, really. There's a lot to go into. So finding out who's in front of you, what people want to hear, what resonates with each person is kind of the best way to go. And I feel like the word regenerative is becoming a little bit more synonymous with people's understanding of organics, of what they wish organics was. I think you can associate it with regenerative a little bit more.
So you're a certified sommelier that's traveling around the country quite a bit. What are some wines other than Troon that are exciting you these days?
Oh boy. I hope I don't get anybody mad at me. First person that comes to my mind, I think of La Garagista. I think of Deirdre out there at the helm of her operation in Vermont. She's doing a lot of hybrid varieties. She does a lot of similarities as far as stylistic approach as Troon, but executing on a whole different product. But we find ourselves in the same spheres of New York. New York City has some of the most pioneering wine lists, as well as the most legacy-driven wine lists. And so to see people like her and us penetrate and still kind of show the old school people that we're carrying the torch forward has been wonderful. Tablas Creek out there shares a certification at the gold level for the regenerative organic certification. So I love to see year to year how their farming quality impacts their wine, different operation than us. And then I also think, for what it's worth, Sierra foothills, El Dorado. There's a lot of these cool transitional zones and what are associated with what people think to be just really hot regions, like Lodi or whatnot. There's some really cool stuff coming out of there. I always love to be a hometown boy in the Willamette Valley. There's a lot, probably too many to name. Of course, I love Christum. I love Analemma, Fossil and Fawn, Maloof. There's some really cool independent winemakers out here that need a little bit more spotlight. And I just don't want to go into Italy and France right now because we'd be here for quite a while. But I do love a lot of old world wines. They just don't happen to find themselves on the West Coast as often.
Well, I have to admit, you seem to have developed a little taste for Bordeaux recently.
Yeah, where we are sandwiched between Washington and California, I always really like the breadth that we can bring, being Oregon, of a little bit more finesse and refreshing styles of wine. And I'm not saying Bordeaux is like that, but it offers that same kind of approach instead of the heavy extraction and ripe styles I find through California. Bordeaux gives a little bit more restraint and a little less dominating of fruit characteristics and a little more like graphite, pencil lead, cherries. I like a little bit more of that rustic. One of our friends, Sondek up at Coquine in Portland, taught me a valuable lesson about the 2 T's in wine, the tension and texture. And I love when I can get tension in a red wine and it's not too flabby or too fatiguing. And I think Bordeaux, as well as Burgundy, provides that for me really nicely.
Well, what about our wines here at Troon? What wines do you think we've made the most progress with that you find most exciting right now?
Every year we've harvested kind of some new grapes that we haven't in the past. So I'll try not to be biased to just recency. Negrette has been very interesting. Most of the grapes that we grow are Rhone and French, but the Rhone red grapes tend to have like this 3-dimensional structure feeling that is different than the Bordeaux red grapes in my mouth as far as texturally speaking. And so Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, they offer some kind of mouthfeel versus the Negrette to me. And even our Tannat lends itself to more of a Bordeaux-like tannin structure. So I look forward to seeing how that comes in more and more and how that wine gets denser and we can kind of find the best way to farm it. Excuse me, we've only harvested 3 vintages of it. And I think that's finally when you start seeing glimmers of who the grape wants to be. Tannat is super versatile. We can't wait till we have some more of that to make red wine, but we make sparkling wine and red wine out of it. Always one of my favorites, but I've got to say Mourvedre has been the standout case over everything for me. And again, to the Tannat's point, like we make Mourvedre as a rosé, we make Mourvedre as a red wine, we make it in oak, we make it in amphora, and I think it has a left and right limit of expression that I love that Syrah has. If you grow it in a cold climate and you grow it in a warm climate, you can really tell the difference. And I love the Mourvedre's kind of young vine, delicate side that you don't typically get to see that often. And as we get an older vineyard more and more to watch the Mourvedre get that density and that rustic kind of earthiness and savory, it'll be really cool to watch that, whether it be in rosé or red wine, to watch it evolve.
So you're talking about all those varieties. So you're not out there selling Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, Sauvignon Blanc. What is it like going into the market with varieties that aren't in that top market echelon?
It's a double-edged sword, but I think the training and the sommelier, association and everything that I've went through in the past, it gives me the ability to show and tell people how, Grenache can be similar to, a Cabernet, even though they're not. I can find a way to bridge, if people haven't heard of these grapes before, to use a reference point that's familiar for them to guide them to how this wine kind of expresses itself. There's always a demand for exclusivity and being the new, kind of cool kid in town, and bringing grapes that no one knows about offers the account a chance to, show their guests something new. It's not just another Pinot from Oregon. Have you heard of the Applegate Valley? Oh, you haven't? Here's the differences in the Applegate compared to the Rogue or the Willamette. And this is why we grow grapes differently. I feel like giving them the tools to then tell other people that are around helps us a lot. But there is I walk into most accounts and they say, let me try your Chardonnay. And I have to kind of backpedal and explain, we don't have any Chardonnay. It's a different region. And again, there's always a talking point with the grapes that we grow. We have about 11 different red grapes, 9 different white grapes. And whether they're in a melange together or they're by themselves, I find, the wine speaks for itself. If it's something new and it's good, half my job is done. But if it's something new and it's not as desirable, you got a lot more work cut out for you.
One thing I've heard you say many times when you come back from New York or Chicago or another road trip is how good it feels to be back in the Applegate Valley. What does the Applegate Valley mean to you?
I've spent just 11 years in the Applegate Valley. I just got married here last year in the Applegate Valley. I've been baptized by this place. Growing up in California in the Bay Area, I'm sure people know what it's like. Just kind of a go, go, go. There's so many people. There's car alarms. You can't see the stars. You get a little bit more of this drag on life. I go to these cities and, for the lack of better terms, like this concrete jungle. And then I'm there for about a week. I see a lot of people every day, a lot of people at night. And then I finally get home and I can take the biggest in-breath. There's no sense of urgency in Southern Oregon except for businesses and for sales. Otherwise, we drive slower here. It's totally converted me. I never thought I'd be one of those people, but I definitely enjoy to take my time. There's no rush. And even when I'm gone for a week, the difference of vegetation and from the farm to the drive out into the mountains where the farm is, it all impacts a little bit more. Everything is a little bit greener. Depending on the season you're in, you get to notice a lot more change and the grounding effect. And maybe we attribute it to biodynamics and the best fertilizers of farmers' footsteps. I get to come back and actually walk the farm and touch plants, which, I didn't know I loved so much until I leave it for a week or so.
So as we wind up our conversation here today, Nate, what do you see as exciting for 2026?
More wine. We have new grapes coming online. We've got new vessels. We have every year another chance to refine our approach. We look back at last year and we get to see what we can do better this year. And I think some of those things that we've planned to do better this year is really what I'm waiting for. And in the farming sense, a lot of what we're talking about is right now in the wintertime, setting up the decisions to then impact later in the year. You can't address, nutrient deficiencies when you see them. You have to kind of address them beforehand and try to prevent them. And the same thing for sales. We're laying a lot of groundwork. I look forward to opening some new markets with some brand new wines and making new friends. You never know. Atlanta, LA, Seattle, there's a lot of places that we're making a lot of relationships with. So I look forward to, getting the new wines out there. I'm always most excited about the newest wines we make. So I look forward to just making more connections and really letting the wine speak for itself and being a messenger the best I can.
Well, Nate, it's been great chatting with you today. Thanks for taking the time to sit down and tell us about your plans and you're looking forward to the next year.
Yeah, thank you. And I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you for listening to Troon Talk. For more information, please visit us at troonvineyard.com. Thank you.